The question I want to ask is, why is anyone working with PTC? Why is anyone who understands what digital transformation actually is working with PTC? That's my question. Kepware is a dying company, and it's all PTC's fault. Takes 0. All right, so this is probably one of the hardest videos I've had to shoot in my entire career. I thought about this the last couple of days in depth. Bunch of phone calls, talked to a lot of people, did a lot of homework, and I have come to the conclusion that I think it's obvious to everyone that Kepware is struggling in the market. You know, they haven't innovated in years, or the innovation has been very slow moving. The last time I saw anything that was even remotely promising was Kepware Plus at LiveWorx a few years ago, which all you need to know is that PTC's LiveWorx show is a defunct show. It doesn't even exist anymore. That's probably the first really terrible sign. But, you know, Kepware really hasn't innovated in years. And I'm just going to tell you I'm just going to be totally straightforward and honest, and everything that I've, you know, what I know and what I speculate, and, you know, just the harsh reality. And I want to ask you guys a question. So I spent the last couple of days out at Litmus Automation doing a deep dive on their company, their business strategy, their architecture, their technology, their roadmap. I mean, no stone was unturned in their business, okay? Let me start by saying I want to give a huge shout out to Vatsal Shah, who's the CEO of Litmus, John Eunice, who's the Chief Operating Officer, Parth and the gang, Adam Kennedy, who brought us out there, who's in charge of global strategy and business development. You know, they invited us to come out and like look at the organization from top to bottom. And one of my key takeaways being out at Litmus was, you know, Vatsal, who is the CEO, he's very careful about messaging externally. So a lot of CEOs are, right? They want to control brand perception and everything. He's very careful about that externally, right? He's very concise in his language, and you know, but behind closed doors, Vatsal is a purely transparent dude. Like, there's no question he wouldn't answer in front of his own team. I asked him some tough questions about their business. I made some very tough observations and comments. They were all constructive, you know, and he did. I mean, that guy has no ego whatsoever. I mean, because I mean, there's some things that questions I asked, and you know how I can be, way that I can ask a question that can rub people the wrong way, and just nothing. The guy just, his singular focus is on, you know, growing the impact of Litmus Automation, Litmus Edge, and through other solutions with Litmus Edge in the market. I mean, that's his singular focus. And that's really refreshing. Okay. There's nothing duplicitous in that organization, top to bottom. It was crazy. I mean, you see it in really small organizations. When I say really small, I mean 20 people and less, and Litmus is a lot bigger than 20 people. So that was incredibly refreshing. Part of the reason that I accepted, I don't have the time to go do this consulting for them. I didn't have the time to do it, but I actually had my team cancel other commitments so that I could go and do this, because it was important for the community. And the reason I went out to Litmus was because I believe that Litmus has a unique opportunity to help a lot of manufacturers that need their help, okay, with Connect, Collect, Store, Analyze. You know, Litmus basically does everything in the digital transformation, smart business stack, Connect, Collect, Store, Analyze, visualize, find patterns, report, and solve. It does everything but visualize, right? You use Grafana basically for visualization or some other external tool. It does everything else in the stack, right? It's essentially a data infrastructure platform that started out with being exceptionally good at the connect on the edge, and then moved to connect to the business, and it's all built on a internal unified namespace inside the platform. It's a brilliant architecture. One of my key takeaways from yesterday, one of the comments I said to them is, listen, PTC is driving Kepware off a cliff. No question about it. They already drove ThingWorx off a cliff. You know, you guys should buy Kepware. That install base, the people there, you know, there's wonderful people at Kepware. The install base, the experiential knowledge. You know, a perfect scenario would be something like either Kepware and HighByte merged together, and that would be perfect because they're both down the street from each other in Portland, Maine. Or Litmus were to buy Kepware. A terrible scenario would be what it is PTC wants to fucking do, which is basically sell Kepware along with ThingWorx to somebody else. Okay? First off, ThingWorx is garbage. Since Rick Bellata hands were taken off and PTC took over ThingWorx, PTC drove ThingWorx into the fucking ground. When PTC acquired Kepware, PTC drove Kepware into the fucking ground. Okay? I don't know why anyone is working with PTC. If you're in this industry and you've watched what they did with ThingWorx and Kepware, why would anyone trust on the PLM side, which is really what they're all going in on? Why would anyone trust that PTC has any idea what they're doing when they drove ThingWorx off a cliff at the height of the digital transformation boom, and then they drove Kepware off the cliff at the height of the digital transformation boom? Because, by the way, that was a marriage made in heaven. Okay? Kepware coupled with ThingWorx was a marriage made in heaven. And yet PTC drove it off a cliff. You're going to ask me the obvious question. Hey, Walker, how did they drive it off a cliff? Great question. I'm really glad you asked. When it came to the Kepware side, PTC failed to develop, they failed to move away from Kepware being dependent upon the Windows operating system. Okay? They started investing in Linux drivers on the edge, and then they just abandoned it. Okay? For whatever reason, here I know the reason. Okay? The problem with Kepware is that the people who are in charge of the development of the product, KepServer, the people who are in charge of the development of the product don't belong in charge of the development of the product. Okay? And the people who are in charge have been in charge. They literally just fell into the position, and they have not innovated. Without question, they have not innovated. Okay? Good people, wonderful people, but they have not innovated. Okay? The last major innovation, the last two major innovations at Kepware were the API, which literally fucking happened before the guy who's in charge of the product now was in charge. Okay, that API was in progress in 2012 when we were doing our Firebrand award-winning project, because we needed to be able to configure Kepware outside of the configuration utility, the KepServer configuration utility. We needed to be able to schedule polling, this polling engine, and a scheduler. That was the base for the API that was ultimately built. Okay? That piece and the IoT gateway were the last two real innovations for Kepware. Kepware Plus or KepServer Plus, which was the distributed architecture, cloud-based distributed architecture and configuration tool, that was a great step in the right direction. They did nothing with. Now, whether that's PTC didn't give them enough money or whatever it is, they didn't do anything with it. And you want to know what their problem is? Here's the problem. Here's the problem at PTC. Here's the problem at Kepware. Okay, and this is a problem Litmus does not have. Okay? Our last 2 days, the whole reason we were at Litmus, I did a very similar consulting meeting with Kepware years ago. Okay, and I gave like a rah-rah speech at Kepware. Like, you guys make the best drivers in the world. Newsflash, they still make the best drivers in the world. Is Litmus right there with them? Of course. But Kepware they still make the best drivers in the world. The only driver suite that Kepware ever made that they should not have gotten into was the oil and gas suite. Okay, and the reason why is because if you look at the hardware in oil and gas, so much of it is unstandardized. So there's if you're going to write drivers to be able to communicate to RTUs in oil and gas or flow meters in oil and gas, you got to be able to support a lot of nuances in many protocols. It's really hard to get it right. Okay, all you got to do is ask AutoSol Communication Manager, ACM. You ask them how fucking hard it is to do. Okay, the only driver suite Kepware has ever written that wasn't a rock solid, grade A, gold standard in drivers was the oil and gas suite. Everything else, the best drivers on the planet. The best drivers on the planet. And yet PTC still couldn't grow the business. Newsflash, Kepware hasn't grown. It isn't Kepware replacing Litmus. It's Litmus replacing Kepware. That's what's happening here. Over and over and over again. Why? Two primary reasons. First off, Kepware looks 30 years old. Okay? But that's not the reason. The reason is it looks 30 years old because they haven't innovated. Like, first off, Kepware should have many more business connectors. And there should be an embedded data operations tool inside of Kepware, and it should be HighByte. Everyone should be asking themselves, why did Tony Payne and Aaron Semley and John Harrington and all these former Kepware people leave Kepware, go start HighByte using the main venture fund, go start HighByte when PTC has way more money to invest in data operations than the main venture fund does? It's because PTC didn't invest. You should be ashamed of yourselves for what you did to ThingWorx, and you should be ashamed of yourselves for what you did to Kepware. So what is my conclusion? And here's my question to you guys. Okay? How is Kepware going to catch up to Litmus? Like, Litmus, here in the next 60 days, actually in the next 30 days, Litmus is going to be developing a Litmus Edge developer suite. Okay, it's going to be Litmus Edge, but for developers, and the license is basically going to say you can download and deploy this. You can deploy it via Docker containers. I don't know if they'll do the OS version, but you're going to be able to deploy it on the edge, headless, in your container management suite. Okay, you're going to be able to deploy it through like the Portainer template library. You're going to be able to deploy it through Docker Hub. Okay, it'll have a 2-hour resettable license in perpetuity. Okay, and it'll be the full Litmus suite. Okay, the license is just going to say you can't use this in production. All right, you're going to be able to use this to develop solutions, and when you're ready to go to production, you're going to talk to us about licensing. Okay, how the fuck is Kepware going to compete with Litmus? You tell me. If Litmus has got 270 drivers, and they're all the drivers that Kepware has, and they can develop a driver in 24 hours or less, and all of Kepware sits inside the Venn diagram that's Litmus. And Litmus has got data operations, a business connection, it's got analytics, it's got open solutions like Node-RED and Grafana. It's got GraphQL support so that you can literally look at the entire genealogy of a message through the platform. And the entire addressable market is every single manufacturer, and it runs on any operating system. Okay? How the fuck is Kepware going to compete? The answer is they're not. They are going to get nuked. And then what happens when Kepware has still got some elite people there. Okay? And there's one guy in particular. It's not a public figure, so I don't want to mention his name. You guys probably know who he is. But they've got some elite people there. But there is one guy who works at Kepware that if that guy left, he works in solutions. He's like a sales engineer, but he's an incredible architect, knows protocols inside and out. But if that guy left, Kepware would die. Kepware would die. So what needs to happen? Okay? Here, call to action. I need two things. Number one, I want the community to tell me, what is your perception? A lot of the community uses Kepware. I love Kepware. I love KepServer. I think it's a fucking gold standard. But the writing is on the wall, and it's been on the wall. And it's PTC's fault. It is PTC's fault. PTC's leadership's fault. And it's PTC's fault that they're going to continue to drive Kepware off a cliff. Because who the hell is going to buy ThingWorx and Kepware together? They are literally trying to sell Kepware and ThingWorx together. And they're trying to bolt ThingWorx onto Kepware. Why? Because they know no one's buying ThingWorx by itself. And that the value at Kepware right now is the knowledge about drivers, the rock solid suite of drivers, and the install base. That's the value of the company. That's it. I mean, a lot of the best people have left, and most of them are at Highbyte. Okay? There are still elite people there. But the guy who is running, the guy who is in charge of developing the product, now, whether he's capable or not capable, I can't speak to that. What I do know is that the guy who's been in charge of the product for close to 10 years now, whether PTC hasn't supported him in developing the product, or it's much more likely, I call him like the Microsoft guy. He's basically one of those guys who he'll make the argument, he'll always pick Microsoft because you'll never get fired for picking Microsoft. He's the guy who doesn't take a chance. He's the guy who doesn't take a risk. What you want to know, the biggest issue at Kepware, and I've been dealing with this for 10 years. I've been working with Kepware since the beginning of the 2000s, 2002, when Kepware was a regional platform. Okay, literally, it was like all their customers were in the northeastern United States, and I was in upstate New York, and they were in Maine. Literally, that's how long I've been working with KepServer. Okay, I've been fighting this battle with them since 2015. I have advocated for change in the platform over and over and over again, especially headless Linux drivers, containerization, SparkPlug-B support. And the answer I've gotten over and over and over again is our customers aren't asking for those things. Okay? You're supposed to be a leader. You are supposed to be a leader. You're supposed to identify the hole in the market. You're supposed to identify not where your customers are right now, you're supposed to meet them there, but also where are they going to be 5 years from now. And by the way, you have people at Kepware who know that. This one guy I'm talking about, that if he left Kepware, Kepware would die. One guy. Think about it. A guy. And there are wonderful people at Kepware. Amazing people. Incredibly adept people. Kepware isn't the fucking problem. PTC is the problem. Litmus is going to destroy Kepware. I'm telling you, I spent 2 days at their offices. I spent days at the offices at Kepware a couple of years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago. I've been to Kepware's offices in Portland, Maine a million times. They are going to be fucking pissed at me for shooting this video. Here's why I'm shooting the video. Because I have had a lot of private conversations with people at PTC, with people at Kepware, who are not going to publicly say any of these things. I've had a lot of conversations with the people they're talking to, PTC is talking to, okay? Who Kepware is talking to. To a person. To a person. The consensus is Kepware's fucked, and it's PTC's fault. So what I want to know from you guys is, what do you think? What do you want to see from Kepware? What's missing? How does PTC save Kepware? PTC does not have the ability. PTC is a dead man walking. They just, and I'm sure they're looking, PLM, blah, blah, blah. If you don't have the ability to be successful with ThingWorx and Kepware coupled together, and you had 10 years to do it, you can't be successful in anything in digital. Let me say it again. you can't be successful in anything in digital. You are a company that buys intellectual property you don't understand. That's what PTC is. PTC is a company that buys intellectual property that they do not understand. Okay? This is the hardest video I've ever had to shoot. Bar none. The hardest video I've ever had to shoot. Litmus is going to destroy Kepware. My opinion is PTC has got to be willing to let Kepware go. They got to sell Kepware to another organization for a fair price. They got to replace the product team. They got to put other people in charge of KepServer and the future products, other than the people who are in charge, whoever the new buyer is. PTC has got to be willing to decouple ThingWorx from Kepware in that sale. They got to be willing to do it. ThingWorx is a fucking anchor, okay? It's an anchor. Why? Because PTC didn't do anything with it. PTC didn't even know what they wanted to charge for it. When we were working for a major connectivity company in like 2016 and 17, and they have this huge ThingWorx license. I'm working with two different clients. They're enormous. One customer was paying 10 times as much for their licenses as the other customer was. PTC didn't even know what they wanted to charge for ThingWorx. PTC didn't even know what ThingWorx was. And I've been saying for a decade, ThingWorx a decade ago was a really great dashboarding tool that had a lot of potential because of the underlying architecture of the platform. That is the technical architecture. The way you could wire things together through the API and the SDK. Then PTC did nothing. When they fucked up manufacturing apps with Asset Manager and Operations Manager, when they fucked all that up, they just gave up. Now they don't even mention it in their earnings calls. And it's their fault. And then they're holding on to them because they're going to try and get, they basically, some genius in the boardroom at PTC has said, you know what? I don't care what happens to Kepware. What you're going to do is you're going to go shop it. You're going to go shop Kepware, and you're going to tell any buyer you're buying ThingWorx with it. Okay? Why am I shooting this video? Because the community can put pressure on PTC to do the right thing. The question I want to ask is, why is anyone working with PTC? Why is anyone who understands what digital transformation actually is working with PTC? That's my question. I'm not saying don't. I'm asking the question, why are you? If you are. And what do you want to see happen with Kepware? Okay? I'm going to have some follow-up videos when it comes to Litmus. That was an incredible 2 days. I do a lot of these consulting meetings where companies have me come in and advise. They'll show me their business model. They'll show me the technology and stuff. And then they ask me to advise on how to grow in the market. And I went out there with some specific goals. It was an incredible meeting. And when you walk away and you look at the speed at which, by the time we left, I went there going, I want them to really focus on citizen developers. I want them to think about their customer profile, like their ideal customer profile is not just one through IT and enterprise, but also other customer profiles like the citizen developer, which means we need to be able to deploy via containers, and we need to have a resettable license. We have to be able to build solutions without buying a license. Okay, we got to be able to do that. That's a citizen developer. And then you go to the business and you go, do you want this? By the time we left, they had already had a complete strategic plan to execute this. Like on the board. They had the whole thing. And then the CEO said, do it to his team. How can you compete? If Kepware's number one competitor in the market is Litmus, how can Kepware compete with Litmus when a Litmus makes the decisions at the speed of light and PTC in Boston can't get out of their fucking way? They don't even care about Kepware. The leadership at PTC should be ashamed of themselves. Ashamed. As always, because I've called PTC out, if anyone from PTC wants to come on, do a live podcast and defend yourself, that way we don't edit it in any way, shape, or form, I am all for it. If anyone from Kepware wants to do this, they can. Obviously, the invitation is open. I love Kepware. I am shooting this video because I love Kepware. I am shooting this video because there are a lot of people who work at Kepware who agree with me. There are people at PTC who agree with me. Many. This is the shit about our industry that pisses me off. All right. With that, like, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.